Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Better Way of Life with me, Graham and Marianne. And today, we don't have a guest. We decided not to have a guest this week so that we could talk about some things that have been hard pressing on our minds over the last few weeks, and especially as we hit holidays as well. So we will talk about that a bit later. But Marianne, you wanted to talk first of all a little bit about the post that you put out the other day about your son Oliver, didn't you?
Oh, joking, man. Yeah, it's quite poignant, really, because I realised that he'd gone in for heart surgery again last week. I realised it was 11 years, virtually to the day, to the first time he was taken into hospital when he was 5 months old. Excuse me. And if I just give a little bit of back history about him,
Yeah.
just nobody, you'll appreciate this because you've got millions of kids. Distress.
Not quite millions, but yes, okay.
It felt like it this morning, I think, from what you said.
Yeah, that's true.
When you've got teenagers, I don't actually think it ever changes. I think for a brief period of time, maybe it's not stressful, but when they start getting mouthy. Yeah, so when he was my youngest was really from about 3 weeks, I think he kept getting bronchiolitis. But he was always okay. We'd take him to hospital, they'd send him home, and we just carried on with that routine. And then one particular night, I just couldn't get him to stop crying, which when you're breastfeeding, it's not good if even that doesn't work. So I phoned 111 and they said, keep him to keep him at home and take him to the doctors the next day. And I said, I don't quite know what I'm going to do with him overnight, because night times always seem worse, don't they, when they're ill. So anyway, then about 10 minutes later, I got a call back from a doctor saying they wanted me to bring him in. Which was great, but I think it was about 11 o'clock at night, and my husband had had knee surgery 2 days before. You couldn't write everything that happened.
So he couldn't drive.
He couldn't drive, which wasn't a problem. And I'm fairly independent. I can, to get to hospital, they had to open up out of hours. This particular consultant saw him, which I'll talk about. We talked about the coincidence thing. So he saw him, and then they said they weren't happy, so took him to resus, took a chest X-ray, and then they said, right, we're going to have to keep him in because he's got paraflu, which is very contagious. Okay, so he's in one of these tent things, which he proceeded to lift off, which anybody who knows my son now, they'll know that he's fairly stubborn. And so then if he was in for about 5 days, so I was breastfeeding him, he was being tube fed, popped out to go and see my eldest, I don't know, with some Easter thing or something. And when I got a phone call to say, can you come back? Because they've noticed there's a problem with his heart. I thought, what? He went in with something else. So in that very moment, everything changed. I went in and we saw this consultant who wasn't a specialist, and they said, we've noticed his heart's enlarged. Well, I didn't even know, excuse me, what that meant or anything. All I know is I ran out of the room because I lost my dad to suicide about 22 years ago. And I remember thinking, when people ask me what that was like, there's no words. And the only thing I can say is the two are comparable. It was just awful. So I ran out of the room and eventually composed myself, and they talked to us about it. And they said basically they thought that because his heart had been working so hard for so long, that it had got bigger. So normally with muscles, bigger muscles are good, but with the heart, it's not a good thing. It's not as efficient. So we then had to go down to Bristol, and they had to take, I think, 20 vials of blood they took that night because they didn't know why it was. They thought it was that, but they said it might be hereditary. So we had to order scanned. They didn't know if it was what's the other one? Not hereditary. In your blood, and I can't think what it's called. Or whether it was a virus or something he'd had. So they had to look back in his DNA. So he was in for 3 weeks in total. And in that time, so that night, we were really fortunate that Ronald McDonald House had space. Normally, they have sort of like 15 families waiting. So Tim and Samuel were able to stay in. And it meant Tim had to drive back each day, drop Samuel at my mum's at 7, drive back at 7, drop in Gloucester, drive back again, come sit with me. And then we'd go through this routine. Then somebody would bring Samuel back. He'd stay in the hospital all evening. Then they'd go back there. So, and then we were basically just sent home and said, keep him well. There's nothing we can do. And then 3 years later, they found out by chance that he had a narrowing in his aorta, which is a bit like a hose pipe being squeezed. That's the best way to think of it. So, but we were really lucky that at the time, not lucky, so he was diagnosed, and they said ordinarily they'd have heart surgery where they literally chopped that bit of dead tissue out, but because he was nearly 4, it's not successful, and they get scar tissue, but they couldn't wait until he'd be older because he'd probably have a stroke. Just by chance, we're very lucky that in Bristol they had one of 2 surgeons in the whole country that offer a stent. So he had a stent put in. So they put the stent in. It was risky, but the benefits are still there. So he's part of the study now. So just to show that it does work. So they've been in once before and gone in and they widen it. Sort of a bit like, I don't know what you'd want to call it. Honestly, scaffolding. I suppose it is, just holding it open.
Yeah. Well, a bit like using a jack on a car.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So they then said that they thought from the scans that his blood wasn't going through as well, so they thought they'd have to widen it. But a bit like a balloon, it gets so far and it'll pop. So they thought they were going to have to put an adult stent in, which is risky, but they thought he was probably big enough. So we prepared for surgery once. They cancelled it once. Then, much to Oliver discussed because he wanted time off school, and it was planned for the Easter holidays, which didn't go down well. So we planned. He went in for that, and hour and a half after it started, they came back, and I thought, oh dear. And actually, in many respects, it was good because, and this is really interesting that they said that basically the stent was doing what it should do. So although the scan had shown one thing, as the surgeon said, the human eye shows actually what's happening. And he said there wasn't a problem. So he said he's not out of a job. So he said just because they can do something, so although they could put the stent in, they have to clinically show that there's an actual reason for it. And there wasn't. Which is actually really good to know, isn't it? Because you think, do they gamble on things? But they don't. But the funny thing was, all that day, everybody was saying how stressed I must have felt. And I didn't. And you're talking to the person that used to be the most stressed person and worrier. I used to sit and worry that I should be worrying about stuff because I couldn't remember if I was worrying. That's what I was like. And then literally when he got diagnosed with the second thing, I remember thinking, I spent so many years worrying about his future. I didn't even think about this roadblock. So I just stopped worrying about stuff. And that solved me randomly. It was my mindset. I had to change my mindset. But I just thought, what can I do? We had 6 months before his surgery, and we can either sit and worry every single day, or we can embrace every moment we've got. And I just did then. So when he went down for a surgery, the surgeon said, are you okay about it? And I said, well, not really if I thought about it, but we've got no choice and I've got faith in you. And I think, as I said to you before we came on, I think that worry can be the thief of joy.
What makes us worry about things? It's a really interesting topic, the whole thing about worry, isn't it? And let's be honest. When Marianne says she doesn't worry, she does worry about certain things. I know she worries about certain things. If it was a computer problem, she'd worry. You can bet your bottom dollar if her printer's not working or a computer was being a silly bugger, then she'd definitely be. you'd definitely be worrying about it. But what makes us worry about certain things and not about other things? And it's weird, isn't it? Really?
Well, I listened to Rob Dial's Mindset Mentor, and on there he was talking about, I've forgotten what the figures are now, but it was something like 80% of what we worry about is never going to happen. So because we go to worst case scenario, which is what I did. As soon as I
Yeah.
opened up the booklet to say what he had, I went to the back page to see what would happen when he's an adult or if he would survive. So I think it was 80% of what we worry about won't happen, and actually of the other, no, I think it might be more, 17%. Sorry, like 83% or something, and then of that percentage left, it still isn't even necessarily going to happen. So we think it will be, and then actually of that does happen, it still won't be as bad as it would be. So for me, I went through to, as soon as they said what was wrong with him, I went, he's going to die, in my head. And then when the consultant we had, she was really good. She said, look, there's 3 ways we can look at this. There's a third that might need to transplant or might die, a third that will be poorly but on medication, and a third that will be on medication but well or get over it. And I literally, even then, said, we can't go down the road of him dying. And I didn't. And interestingly, the consultant said, don't look on the internet because people tend to write about stuff when it's bad. And so I actually didn't. I literally only ever took nice pictures and only ever talked about stuff in a positive way.
Yeah. It's really interesting, actually. The internet, it seems to me to be the kind of biggest kind of perpetrator of negative thoughts in your own mind.
For that reason,
yeah. Now, I'm going to be honest. One of the things I always worry about is when I'm driving. I've done a lot of driving over the years, and maybe that's part of it. I worry about it slightly less now because actual driving, because because my job isn't driver dependent now. But when it was, when literally I had to have a license and drive as part of what I was doing, and I used to do about 80,000 miles a year. That's a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I was really obsessive about things like speed limits, speed cameras, all of those things, right? To the point where if I was in the car with someone else, I'd get, oh, why are you driving so slow? Or, why don't you just put your foot down a bit more? Or all of this sort of malarkey. But I was obsessed by, even to a point where if I planned a journey, I'd looked on that journey to see whether there were like speed traps, etc., or anything coming up that might cause me a problem driving wise. So I was aware of it beforehand. I could get really, really kind of.
So were you worried about going over the speed limit, or?
I just worried about getting caught on a camera for doing the wrong thing.
Though, when I know recently I was, and I hold my hands up to it, and it made it. And actually, they wouldn't let me do the speed awareness, which I thought actually was really bad on my education wise, because I mean I hadn't been done for speeding for 14 years.
Yeah.
And I drive a fair amount. And I thought, well, actually, I would have been the person that surely they would have looked at, but well, actually, weighing it up. And yet other people had done the speed awareness course quite a few times. And I thought, well, if they've done it a few times, then it's not working. But it does make you anxious then, because you think, what will happen if? And I dread the post. So I say that I don't worry about stuff. I do, but I contain it. Probably, and I try to rationalize it. So whenever the post comes, I'll suddenly get an odd, horrible, sick feeling after I got done then.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, oh no, it's going to happen again.
Well, I've never had a speeding ticket.
Oh, good for you.
Touch wood, whatever. I've never had one. Never had to do a driver course or whatever. But
you're good.
No, and just so for the record, we're not condoning speeding, by the way. I'm not saying that you
No, but
shouldn't
I think
worry about.
educational wise, it's good if people are educated.
I think it is, but in a way, worrying about it
Oh, worse.
it
Makes
it
yeah.
isn't particularly good either. And you know, I used to, if hand on heart, there were times when I'd be like leaving home at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive to London, etc., from Somerset. And you know, when you've driven the same route over and over and over again, and I'd know that I'd gone past speed cameras, and there would be times when I thought, now, did I drive at the right speed past those speed cameras? And it's just because it was so automatic for me. I wasn't necessarily fully conscious of what I was doing at every single point in terms of my speed. Now, I probably automatically dropped my speed to the right speed, etc. But if I couldn't remember, that would worry me, even though I'd probably done the right thing. Even that would cause me to panic and think, oh no,
because you were doing it so often, it just became second nature.
Exactly.
I know I used to worry more. Strangely, like now I have to sort of, until something will happen, and then I'll suddenly go off. But I know for me, and I always talk about this, and I'm sure people get bored of it, but I don't really care because I'm still going to talk about it. After I was diagnosed with ADHD, potentially or autism as well, but I don't worry about stuff. I just literally don't worry about stuff that really doesn't need to be worried about. That kind of stuff, I really don't anymore. I used to worry about what people thought of me. I used to worry about what I'd said. And when I think now about the amount of time that I spent worrying about what people think. So somebody messaged me the other day about something. They put something on Facebook and I'd responded. And I have quite a lot of friends now that say, "Oh, Marianne, I think maybe I am," or and I said, I really just don't. It really doesn't bother me now what people think, because it doesn't. I'm like, if you don't like that, and that, so even that, if you think they're not big worry things, well, actually, potentially they are, but they're not life changing. But when you think, if every day you spend worrying about, particularly for people that with RSD, so rejection sensitivity dysphoria, that worrying about, did I say the wrong thing? Was that okay to have said that? That can be really consuming to some people, massively consuming. And now when I think I've rid myself of that, I don't ever walk away from situations now, ever worrying about whether I reacted the right way, because if I did it and I felt okay, then it was okay. If I felt like it wasn't, so sometimes I've done it with you before and I've gone, oh, sorry, I was in a bad mood, or sorry, I snapped, or, but I've decided that and I'll communicate. But I think that now I don't catastrophize it. I think that's what he talks about, Rob Dahl, catastrophizing, that we would assume that, and that's what a lot of people, I'd say a lot of neurodiverse people, but actually I think a lot of people do it. It's just not necessarily talked about, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think so. That kind of makes me think about another subject I want to come on to in a bit, which is something we've noticed a lot more on things like LinkedIn of late, which is blocking. But it's actually we've started to see a lot more people sort of post in the last few weeks about some of the stuff we've been talking about for a while now, which is people just blocking people, and also people getting a bit fed up of sort of empty kind of rhetoric as well. So we'll come back onto that in a bit. But let's talk about because we've been talking about Oliver and the fact that he wanted to have his operation in in school time, etc. Let's talk about and you know, and the fact that it was in the Easter holidays. Let's talk about the holidays. Parents, if you're out there watching this and you've had the Easter holidays this week, all sympathy goes out to you, etc. It's really hard. It's really hard work. I had a situation this morning where two of my children wanted to go to a drama club thing over. It's run for the whole day, and it's about 15-20 minutes from here by car, and it meant getting up at a certain time to go over. And I get to, and I said to the eldest one, I said, you need to be ready by 9:30. And at 9:40 still wasn't ready. Now, how many other people have had this experience over the holidays that, what is it with a certain age group that they just don't seem to have any concept of time?
The youngest gets up early.
Yes.
He just does get up early. So we were going to go down the beach this morning. And I said to the eldest yesterday, please, can you come down with us? Your brother wants you to come down. I want you to. Please, can you make sure that you do? Yeah. And then in the end, we dragged him out. And then we literally put our head out the door and he went, spitting about, I don't like this sort of rain. I'm not coming. I went, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And that was it. He didn't come. That was it.
You mentioned to me yesterday, I think it was, or it was the day before, about the fact that there were so many people, so many men posting on social media about what a great job they've done of looking after the kids during the holiday, because it's been their opportunity to be the stay-at-home dad, etc. Whoopee-doo, yeah.
It really grates on me, to be quite honest, and I don't know why I had a bee in my bonnet about it yesterday. I think it was, I've seen it quite a lot, and I've seen it from particular people. And you know, you do childcare, and you don't make a big deal of it. You do it the same as I do it, and your wife goes out, as in out of the house to go to work. And that's just the way that it is. It's just when someone grabs their child and posts a picture saying, crikey, I'm going to take a week to have to get over this. And then sometimes they'll put a token gesture, all credit to all the women out there that do this all the time. Or it'll be in a tone of, aren't I so great? To which mine was, well, I've had 15 and a half years, and I don't expect a medal. I chose to have those children. But the guilt, I was just talking to my auntie because we're staying away for a few days, and she was a teacher as well, and I said that Oliver said to me, so we went down the beach, and I said, we've got to get back because I've got to do the recording. And he went, why? I said, because I've had quite a lot of the holidays, I haven't actually done any work really. He said, and I said, well, you know, I've got a business and I sort of need to do stuff. And then I know that they never question their dad going to work. And it just, you can't help but and I do think there is more on women. There just sort of is. That sort of guilt. I do, and we've talked about this previously, that I think with, we talked about it with Kirk actually, about the boxes, that men tend to put things in separate boxes and deal with them, which I think women could take a lot from that, to be quite honest, that you don't have to be responsible for complete your kids' happiness, if you see what I mean. Just because you go and do X doesn't mean that their life is ruined. I mean, apparently yesterday, bit of humour, walked down the beach and Oliver chucked this shell at me and said, take that. He said, take it back, we'll listen to the sea when we get back. So bearing in mind, he's nearly 12, and I went, you can't really hear the sea when you listen to a shell. And he went, you've wrecked my childhood. I looked at him and I went, what? And then he said, no, I'm only joking. And because I looked at puzzled him, I said, "No, I'm only joking." He said, "Why does it do that?" I thought my feet. I thought, I don't know, is it to do with the blood? Or I said, "I think it's the noise of the air moving around in that." And he went, "All right." He said, "I thought there was a direct line from the sea to the shell."
Oh,
Started
I like
laughing.
that.
He went, "I don't really think so." He said, "But it was quite nice thinking it was some sort of magic, wasn't it?" I just thought it was great. But
Yeah.
then it got me sort of thinking about how nobody gives you this manual for being a parent. Like, and whether you're male or female, or literally nobody gives you a manual of what you should do, what you shouldn't. I've only got two kids, but they're very different. Um, And then I was thinking, God, the eldest one's going to be getting a moped or something soon. And then I suddenly sat there last night, thought, oh God, the worry's going to stop because I'm now going to be worried about that. But yeah,
Mm.
nobody gives you a manual. And then, as you said, on social media, whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, whatever it is, I speak my truth. I think you do as well, because I just don't think it helps. We were talking about this with Sophie last time. Well, can everyone just tell it as it is? I mean, I do, which whenever I post on Facebook, I always joke about stuff because
Yeah.
I know that somebody else is going to look at
Well,
it probably.
that's kind of my point, going right back to what I
Yeah,
was starting to say, really, which is that, I mean, talking about, me asking a question out to the
yeah,
audience, which is that does everybody else have that problem with, like,
yeah,
they're teenagers, etc.? Because I presume we probably do, and we were probably like that when we were teenagers, and these things go round and round in circles, etc. But the thing is, being a parent is the most wonderful experience in the world. It's also really hard work. As you say, there's no manual for it, etc. So the reality of it is that we want to put out stuff, and I think it's only right that people put stuff out there about, kind of asking questions, and asking for sort of, affirmation from other people that they're going through the same sort of thing, so that because we all want to feel like we're going through some kind of shared experience. It's not just us. We all want that. So I don't think it's totally wrong to talk about your family or your kids or whatever, but trying to use the fact that you've been a parent as a thing of scoring points.
yeah.
Somebody else hasn't been a parent, but they've probably done something difficult that week themselves.
Well, I
Right?
think I used the word this week, toxic positivity, I think it was, and
Yeah.
it's that, and it's all of that kind of stuff. And I always say to people, somebody said to me, somebody I know hasn't got any children, and he's going through a tough time at the moment, and he said, "But I keep looking at you," and I said, "Seriously, don't." I said, because we've all got crap that we go through, and sometimes I remember after my dad died, I went into work because I just said I don't want to sit at home, and I said, "Can I just go to a staff meeting or something?" Because and I remember someone said, "Oh, I'm moaning about this," and I said, "Look, life goes on. My dad died last week or whenever it was. That's life. You've got your life to live. I stubbed my toe yesterday and I cried at that. We're not the two things." And I think to try and deny somebody said to me once after Oliver got ill, they said, "Oh, well, it could have been worse." And I thought, well, it could have been better, and he didn't have it like your son hasn't.
Yeah.
And so I just think that I always make a point of letting people know that it doesn't, if it matters to you, it absolutely matters to you, and nobody should be denied of that. And I try to remind myself that with my kids, that whatever it is they're going through is difficult in that moment when you're trying to, because it's, you try and weigh up that actually you can't carry on being selfish like this
Yep.
because it won't work. But equally, I know he's got girlfriend problems at the moment, and I sort of roll my eyes every day, kind of thing. And my youngest just now said, I said, if I had £1 for every time you say to me, I don't want to, or that's not fair, or I'd be rich. And he said, if I had £1 for every time you said I was lazy, I'd be rich. And I thought, when you You realise you've bred another version of yourself. But I think there's a lot out there. There seems to be, to me, people that either very much speak their truth, and we talked about this yesterday, people that very much speak their truth and wear their heart on their sleeve and say as it is, the business isn't easy. It's not. And there's
Yep.
the other people who paint a very perfect picture, but also it was really difficult for me back then. And I think, but where's your hand that you're putting out? And I'm not going to lie, you know, you you did that for me. You did that for me, and I'll always be eternally grateful for that. That you, very successful at what you do. But it's very easy when you're in your ivory tower to say to people, you must do this. People seem to list all these things that you should and shouldn't do in business. These.
Well, yeah, I don't think you should sit in an ivory tower. Is my opinion on that. I think you need to come down to where people are. If you are in a tower, you need to come down.
People up. Invite people up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you come down first and then invite people up. So that you need to see, you need to walk in people's shoes first, etc. But I just think that that there's a problem when people put out kind of emptiness out there, and then people get sucked in by the success of somebody, and it's not overly helpful. I think in terms of the kind of people's truths, everybody's truth is different, right? I did a post a little while back on this truth, and that threw up some really interesting conversation, because it's a perception truth. And everybody's perception is different, because the way that you view life is different from everybody else. And if we know that, then the really important thing is that my perception of my life and how I do business, and the fact that I'm I stay at home most of the time because I look after the children, etc. My perception of how my life is and how difficult that is, or what's involved in that, is going to be very different from somebody else's who doesn't necessarily have children, and can go out and just go off to a network event or whatever, ad hoc, or go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, doesn't have anybody to worry about getting breakfast for, or whatever. That your lives are going to look and feel very, very different. To me, there's not a problem with them talking about their life in the way that is, or me talking about the way my life is in the way that is. But we should be respectful and mindful of the fact that there's difference there.
Yeah.
Right. And it comes back to what I go on and on about, which is assumptions. People make too many assumptions, and that's where the big problem is. And it's also one of the reasons why you need to be incredibly careful when you see anybody that has a template for success on social media, because their life might not be in the same template as yours.
This is what I see with a lot of coaches, and I see quite a lot of coaches that it would be that template. And like I said before, people said to me, "Oh, you should coach." And I thought, oh, I haven't really got a template. And actually, maybe that's why I would be successful, because I don't know if it doesn't work. I sort of coach, same as you do, lots of people with their learning, and actually, even in terms of their trainer journey, or their teaching journey, or their careers. Because the first bit you've got to do is you've got to understand who they are and what they are. So yesterday, I had another rant about something yesterday to you, about somebody that posted that nobody's going to save you. Nobody's going to save you. Excuse me. Nobody's going to save you. You've got to do it yourself. And so I did comment on that, and I said, but that can be really, really quite. I don't think of what the word is. but maybe for somebody that's got, let's just say it's ADHD, that actually will get stuck. So as my friend says, they get jammed. And it's not about, is it about someone saving themselves? It's not that you expect someone to, but you don't actually know where to go with it. So when you reached out to me, well, we were sort of speaking, that I think you could see that I wanted to, but I just couldn't see the wood from the tree. So I wanted to. And often it's not that I think that actually when you start speaking to people, there will be some people that are wanting it all fixed by somebody. But actually, once you get to know many people, what you'll actually see is that they just didn't know where to start. And I did a video for you this morning that represented how it was for me, that no matter how hard I tried, just couldn't seem to get anywhere with it because I couldn't see the wood for the trees. So did I want someone to save me? I probably would have said, yes, I do. Actually, you came along, but that's not because I didn't do the hard work, though. I just needed somebody to just take it, because when you're in it, it's just too hard to. And of course, everybody's selling all of these often expensive solutions to that, which isn't necessarily.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because that post came from a coach.
Yeah.
And that's interesting in itself, because if it's a coach and they're saying, well, it's about your mindset, and you need to change your mindset, and then you can save yourself, right? You kind of question, what do you need the coach for?
Yeah.
I mean, surely. I think one of the problems that we've got actually in a lot of society at the moment, and I refer to A Better Way of Life, which I've got on today.
I know I haven't got mine because Oliver's got it on.
There you go. I refer to A Better Way of Life. There it is. Is that actually one of the secrets of success is that we can't do it alone. We cannot do anything alone. And the reason being is that we don't exist as singular people on this planet. We exist amongst other people. And even if you're looking at it from your business point of view, you might be a solopreneur, right? You might be the only person in your business, etc. But don't underestimate the people around you. Don't underestimate your family, because they are there supporting you so that you can do what you do, right? Don't underestimate your clients, right? And actually, I do wonder sometimes whether a lot of people out there, that their business life, why it suffers is because they've got the wrong clients. They've chosen people, but they've entered into a relationship, just like if you go into the wrong relationship with a husband or wife or partner or whatever, they've chosen people that are not good for them.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, if you get great clients, then you lift each other up. Right. That is part and parcel of working with the right people, is that there's something in the relationship which enables something better to happen, right? And so this whole thing about it's all about me, and it's all about, there's so much, it's about me on social media. It's not about you. Everything you do, you coexist with other people, your clients, your family, your anybody you work with, whatever. Even in the day when you go to the shop or whatever, when somebody serves you in the shop or whatever, you have a choice as to how you coexist with these people.
Well, don't you think, though, that I was just thinking about this week, that for many people their business is their business, but it kind of doesn't run through their veins. So, and I know people joke with me about the fact that, you're always talking about education, and I think, well, actually, because in all honesty, and I'm not joking here, and that's why we look at a better way of life, that actually so much does come down to education. So I was on the beach the other day, gone down with Oliver, and we were stood at the top because it sort of goes, they live sort of high up, and we go through this little cut through, we call it. And so we stood at the top, and this lady came along, and she said, go on, run. You know you want to. And I said, he would normally. Like normally I would film him running down. And I said, he can't because he had surgery last week. So where they went in his groin. And she went, oh gosh, what was it he had? And I said, and she went, wow. She said, you're an inspiration, you are, because I was telling him. And she said, I work with a lot of people, a lot of older people. And she said, and they're going to hear this story. And I said, oh, what do you do? And she said, I do stone carving. I do workshops. So straight away I go into, oh, she's a teacher. So we ended up talking about that, and she was telling me about what she'd done. She'd come down and see us. So I did. I took the boys down yesterday, and we went down, and she offered us tea and cake, and I was chatting to the people, and one of the ladies in there, she said, oh, I did art, and then I became a teacher, and we were talking about that. And it just goes through everything I do, just comes down to, and she's going to come on our podcast, actually. Donna, her name is. But it just comes down to education. And I think if you open your mind, when I just see so many people that their business is over there, and they're the ones that have got very, very slick, everything's very, all of this. And I think, but is it really going through your veins? Is it? Is it? My children laugh. They go, oh, you talk to somebody everywhere you go. And they say, well, that's probably because that's the sort of person I am. And I love meeting people and I love learning things because it just opens your mind. And I just don't know if some people have that way. So their business may look perfect, but actually, if I was somebody that wanted to have business from somebody, I want to see that person's authentic and I want to see that what that business means to them. I don't want to see their flash cars being posted about. It makes me feel a bit really about it, to be quite honest.
Well, you see, I think this is part of the problem of where people go.
I'm not saying they shouldn't have things, but sorry.
No. But this is part of the problem that I think when people set out in terms of their ambition, right? Which is that, you know, this is where I have a problem with the whole idea and concept of work-life balance, right? Yeah. Because I actually honestly believe that if you want a better way of life, then actually what you should be seeking for is to be doing something, right? Just doing something, right?
Yeah.
Which makes you passionate and gets you up in the morning and and pushes you. Now, that is not to say that you won't have financial problems at times. That is not to say that it won't be hard. That was not to say that you won't struggle with it, but you will feel fulfilled that you're doing it and you're fighting that fight. A really good example of this came from watching Ben Fogle last night on one of his return visits. And he went back to Sri Lanka to see the vet out there, the young vet that had gone out to Sri Lanka. His last visit was 5 years ago. And she'd left an unfulfilling life as a vet. She qualified as a vet. She would practice as a vet for 2 years in the UK, but just felt that she wasn't really doing anything that was worthwhile as a vet. She took a year out. As part of that, she traveled to Sri Lanka. She saw the plight of all of the street dogs over there, and she decided she was going to do something about it. Right. And as he was talking to her last night, you know, she was talking about like during COVID, like it nearly broke her, you know, like 30 of her team, I think it was, had to leave the country. And, you know, she was down on her knees and it was tough and you could see the tears in her eyes and everything else. But right at the end, you know, he said, is this your paradise? Does this place save you, etc.? And she said, you know, I'm just She said, yes, it's tough. Yes, it's hard. Yes, I've been beaten by this place. I've been bruised by this place, but it also picks me up, and doing this is me. There's work-life balance for you. There is no work-life balance in that. She does what she needs to do in her life.
For her, I think it's that better way of life for you, isn't it? And I think, again, as a parent, you'll have seen it. And I say particularly, and the reason I'm saying this isn't excluding other people, it's because the more people you add to your team in your life, whether it's, so the simplest way of life is on your own, I'm sure. Then you add a partner or two, depending on how you, or three, or depending on what you're,
whichever way you want to go.
And then you have children, and each time you do that, it then doesn't become. You've then got that whole. I think Sophie talked last week about having her me day, because you can end up sort of being a martyr as a parent, thinking, oh God, it's all about the children, and it's like, yeah, but then if you sacrifice yourself, because you're only ever going to be, I went back to work when Samuel was 3 months. Was it choice? No, but was I happy doing it? Yeah, I was actually. People looked down at me for that, and I thought, well, we've made the choice, and we're making the best of our situation. But I think it's really, you really have to dig really, really deep, whether it's people that, again, Sophie talked about, whether you're leaving a partner or whether you're going to stay, whether you're going to move or whatever you're going to do. It's really, really hard. Part from me being diagnosed was me really digging deep and accepting that my truth was my truth, and it wasn't about anybody else, and it wasn't about comparing. It was about being true to me. My children don't like going places where there's lots of other people, so they've never liked doing all these big. They'll do theme parks, but we don't go in big queues and stuff. They don't like doing all the holiday razzmatazz that other people do. And so when my eldest was young, we now know he's autistic, but he never wanted to be at the front of these assemblies. And I used to think, God, I've turned up to this, and he's put himself at the back. And I always used to think I wanted him to do more. And then I thought, he doesn't want to, Marianne. He's happy. Now I've got a child that plays guitar, plays drums, and he absolutely loves it, and then for my youngest now, he does boxing. I'm not happy about it, but he's happy. He absolutely loves it. And I had to just drop it and say, this isn't about me. It's not about other people that maybe they're doing it their way. Then that made me sort of, but it is really difficult. I think it can be difficult to sort of, sometimes I even sit there now and I think, what is it I want? I don't know what I want. I know that doing my business, and you asked me that question when you first started working with me, and I'll never forget it, when you said to me, if you could do it all over again, would you still do this? And I said, yes, I would. Even for the fact that I've had no money at times, even for the fact that I don't doubt myself as such. I think it's just really hard when there's so much noise there, and being good at what you do isn't actually enough. Now, you've obviously got to be, but you've got to have all the other stuff, like you said, that you bring other people in. And I'm a perfectionist, and I had to ditch that and go, do you know what? You're not failing if you ask somebody else to do something. You're actually helping yourself succeed. You're helping yourself succeed with that. But it's really hard. I think and because we see so much. When I was a kid, I think, God, I didn't see my parents. I went to gymnastics. In the holidays, we just buggered off out all day. And there was none of this comparison about how many Easter eggs. People put posts out, how many Easter eggs did you get? And I went, none. I didn't get one. I don't want one. I eat enough chocolate anyway if I want, anyway. And people showing pictures of how many Easter eggs their kids got. Why?
And this kind of brings us back to the two things that we're going to end on today, which that I said that we would cover, which is the fact that people are putting out their success in kind of figures and sort of like lines of success. But what you're not actually seeing is the success, right? And one of the things that, you know, I love to do, and you do it as well, is we show what we're achieving. I'm not saying that we're making millions of pounds, because we're not. One of the things we like to do is we like to show what we're achieving by showing what we are achieving with other people. And I think that's fundamental. All of these people that post on social media and they go, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but you can't actually see what they're doing. That's, to me, I'd be wary. A, are they actually succeeding at that?
Yeah.
And B, where can I see that? Where can I see that you're succeeding? And why are you not showing me? Yeah.
You see the passion. To me, I want to invest my money in someone that really wants to invest in other people.
Yep. You know, you should have people shouting about you, but you should be doing it together, and you should be shouting about them first. Don't expect people to shout about you if you're not shouting about them. That's really important, right? Shine a light on other people first, not expect that light to be shining on you. And the second thing, before we run out of time, is this blocking thing. And I'm so pleased that other people have started picking up on it. I think this is incredibly dangerous. People blocking, and it comes back to the truth thing. People blocking people because they only want their truth to be heard.
Yeah.
That's so dangerous.
Get rid of everything else.
Yeah, that's not a truth. Here's my view on that. That's not a truth. When somebody has to block other people, if someone has to block people that might question them about what they're saying or whatever, in order to shut their voice down so that other people don't see that and they can only hear their voice, right? That's not a truth.
But my Samuel, his old school, the head teacher they had, so it was an outstanding school, and I questioned a few things. And of course, being a teacher, I would question things, which is okay to do that. To me, I will sit in a meeting with anybody if I know that I can defend myself with evidence as to why my answer is or argument is right. She wouldn't go into meetings with me. She refused to ever go into a meeting with me ever. Which I only ever saw that. Why would you not go into a meeting with me if you think you're right and you know that you're right? And I don't mind being, if you can prove me wrong, then I'm absolutely fine with that. But she refused to go. And also, like when Ofsted came in, I didn't get given a questionnaire because I'd questioned her 2 weeks before. So she just silenced me, which is the same as blocking me. So my opinion didn't actually get through to where it should have done. So that wasn't a complete truth.
We're not saying, by the way, folks, that if you don't agree with somebody on social media, that you just argue with them, right? I mean, let's always be respectful, right?
Yeah.
But don't necessarily just carte blanche agree with somebody either. You
question
know,
it. We're just saying about qualifications. We're saying that something this morning you read that somebody actually put something out there about accreditation, and they said, which was great, by chance it was on there, and I said, please, everybody, question. If somebody says they do something, question it. I'm happy for someone to question if what I do is right. Do I say what I say? Yep, absolutely. And you can go and ask the awarding body that I say that I'm with. Absolutely. Nobody should ever be fearful of questioning them if you know that your truth, and there are particular truths, is true.
Yep.
With bullying as well, by blocking. And it's quite, what's the word, cowardly, really.
I've happily, from time to time, I've put something out there on social media, and I'm sure a lot of us have, and somebody has come back and they've said, really? And they've made me question myself, and that's fine. And I'm quite happy to sit and go, do you know what? Maybe I'm not right. Maybe I haven't thought about this, or maybe I haven't worded this correctly, or maybe, you know, and all of that's fine, because that is all about learning. If everybody does it with a bit more respect, then we all get a little bit further. So yeah, by all means, question. By all means, you know, have a dialogue. Have a dialogue with someone, right? But
And
treat
be
it as
happy
though
to
you
walk in
are.
their shoes. Be
Yeah,
happy to walk in their shoes so that you can understand their truth, which is what you've said.
yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know what you're going to make of this morning when you've listened to it. I don't know whether we've answered anything or everything, but hopefully it's stirred some conversation. If you've enjoyed today's chat, please do share it with other people. If it's provoked a question, just like we were talking about just now, and you've thought, oh wow, I need to ask that, or I'd love to put that out there as a response. Give your response, so other people can join in. I love it when these go out and I see another conversation starting, and it becomes its own entity and its own conversation. That's what to me good content should be about on social media, not somebody's rhetoric,
Lecturing, yeah.
not somebody's kind of, this is the truth. It's when people put stuff out there, but that questions,
Yeah.
and even questions their own standpoint, right? And I know we've got to sell, but actually we haven't. He said, contradicting himself in the same sentence. What we've got to do is, rather than sell, we've got to walk. We've got to start walking with people. If we walk with people, sales will happen. The exchange of resources, that's what I like to call it, will happen as we walk, right? So if you've tried social media and you've tried selling, and you've just been putting out your truth and not ever talking to people about their truth, or not educating people, and we can tell you a lot about that, then try educating, try walking, try learn. And part of education is that even as an educator, you learn as well.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly important part. We will be back with a guest next week. Hopefully we can find them. We've locked them away in a cupboard somewhere. We just got to find the key. But until next week, I hope you've enjoyed it. From Marianne, who's in Margate, are you? Or Rams?
Okay, yeah, and the sun's come out actually, so I think I'm going to
Margate,
go into Ramsgate before we drive back, go into the boat.
There you go. So from Margate and from Somerset, have a good Friday, everybody. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, bye for